All right. Hello, everyone. Hello, my name is Thuy Nguyen, and I want to welcome you to, this is a very special event near and dear to my heart. This is the Sin 75 first generation Vietnamese American from refugees to model minorities event here. Look, this is really a special, it's a project that's near and dear to my heart. This is our first annual event to try to recognize and celebrate the Vietnamese American community here at Mission College, students, faculty, staff here at Mission College. My name is Thuy Nguyen. I teach American history here at Mission College. I am so excited for you guys to hear from the participants today and the stories that they have to share. But before we dive into the conversation, guys, I would kindly ask for everyone to mute themselves. And as we present and as the panel members are speaking, but we strongly encourage you to use the chat box, right, and hit those emojis to share your thoughts and your reaction as we're going along the way, because we definitely want this to be an active learning space for all. And I'm hoping that we get to tell our stories, but by the end, there will be a short session of questions and answer, right? Because we definitely want to set time to engage with our audience in particular. So just guys, this project was something that's always been on my mind since I started teaching back in 2012, but it didn't really come into fruition until I started working here at Mission College. During the pandemic, it's simply because, guys, I got a chance to really connect with a lot of great people here and to collaborate with some really amazing people. So first and foremost, I want to thank my AAPI Affinity Group for their support. I also want to thank my wonderful colleagues in the social science, humanities, counseling, and everybody in the department, the history department. And of course, I can't thank enough my students for always inspiring me to do better. But this event would not be possible without the members of this panel who have been willing to share their incredible stories with us. And as a Vietnamese American, I know firsthand how hard it can be to tell these type of stories, but I think it's really important that we share our story. So I want to thank you, Danny, Theresa, Ben, and Thuy for stepping up, being brave enough to share your story, but also for inspiring me to follow through with this project, to tell you the truth, in particular, because it was always in the back of my mind. It was always, on the shelf for me, but it was your words of encouragement that really helped me to put this project together. So before we hear the incredible stories that our panel members have to share, I think it's really important that I share some historical context with our audience. Just some basic information, guys, on the beginning of the Vietnamese American experience. And we can't really talk about that without talking about the Vietnam War. So I just can't get around that. So if you don't mind, I would like to do a short presentation just to give you a little bit of history, a little bit of background. So that way, when our panel members are telling you guys their story, there's no confusion or do I need to offer any clarification, right? So I think it will help contextualize the stories that you're about to hear. But it's also, I am a historian, so I'm not sure, why you guys are surprised by this, that I would hijack this event and try to get my lecture on. And I can already hear my students already like, God, he's got never miss an opportunity to lecture. But yeah, I'm gonna try my best. Just full disclosure, guys, this presentation is not meant to be a comprehensive or the in all to the Vietnam War. Just full FYI, it took Ken Burns 18 hours to tell the history of the Vietnam War. 18 hours, right? I'm gonna try to do it under 10 minutes. So I'm gonna, just full disclosure, guys, it's not gonna be completely comprehensive, but I'm gonna try my best, right? I'm gonna try my best to contextualize it for you. right? In particular. All right, so the title of this event, as you can see, it is titled, since 75. First generation Vietnamese Americans from refugees to model minorities. And I put that as a question mark on purpose. So let me explain to you why the since 75, right? Since 75 is part of the title is because that's to acknowledge that the year 1975 was the year that was the beginning of this diaspora out of Vietnam, but not just in Vietnam, guys, but it's also in neighboring countries, Cambodia, Laos in particular, out of the Southeast Asian region. So 1975. So that's the title, right? Since 75, because that was the year where more than 120,000 Vietnamese refugees started to arrive here in America. And I wonder how many of you guys have ever seen this image before, right? So just let me know in the chat box or hit those emojis. Like, let me know how many of you guys recognize this image or seen this image before, right? So yeah, right? Maybe a couple of you might have, right? Some of you, this might be a memory of some sort. But yeah, this is the famous image, guys. 1975, the title is The Last Helicopter, out of Saigon. And this picture is famous for a reason, because it really marks the end of the Vietnam War. And this is the beginning of the diaspora, but also, if you guys don't know, that within the Vietnamese American community in particular, April is a special month within the community. We call it Black April. And Black April is to commemorate this diaspora out of Vietnam in 1975, right? So this marks the end of the Vietnam War. And maybe for some of you, if you guys are not familiar, where Vietnam is, right? Vietnam is located in Southeast Asia. It's right below somewhat China. And as you can see on the map there, it's that purple S shape, right? So for some of you, it might look like a purple S, but for the rest of us Vietnamese people, we see a dragon. Apparently, that's what it is. That's why like dragons play like a big role within like Vietnamese culture in particular, because it just kind of looks like a dragon, like bending its tail in particular, right? So Vietnam is strategically located at the gate of Southeast Asia, right? This is the entrance into Southeast Asia. And this is important for a reason, because even though the Vietnam War, right, the title is the Vietnam War, the fact that it's located in this region, and if you look at the neighboring countries, Laos and Cambodia, those countries are going to be impacted by the war itself as well. So guys, this is our first time doing this, so we want to recognize the Vietnamese American experience, but we are not the only ones, right? Cambodians, Laotians, Hmong people were also a part of this diaspora as well after 1975, okay? So that's a little geography for you, right? Where is Vietnam in this region? And maybe some of you are thinking like, okay, why was there a war in Vietnam in the first place, right? Again, Vietnamese Americans, we wouldn't be here if it was not for the Vietnam War. And in order for you to understand the Vietnam War, you have to understand the context is that Vietnam, like many countries after World War II, it became independent. It freed itself from French colonialism, from Japanese imperialism. But unfortunately, guys, after World War II, you have the Cold War. If you guys are not familiar, right, the Cold War, this was a war between the two superpowers, America, capitalism, democracy on one side. You got communism, the Soviets, right, on the other side, right? I'll put this in popular culture for you. I want you guys to think of Rocky IV, right? Like Rocky IV, right? Rocky and Drago, right? This is the Cold War. And unfortunately, when Vietnam became independent, it had to choose which side it was going to align. Very similar to Korea today. Vietnam, after World War II, was sort of split in half between North and South, right? In the North, you have communism. In the South, anti-communism. And there was a civil war that went on in Vietnam starting in the 1950s, okay? fighting over who will get to reunite the country as one under which flag in particular. So the Vietnam War, guys, it's really a civil war more than anything else among Vietnamese people in particular. But the problem is it's happening in the context of the Cold War. So like many countries, you know, it had to choose which side it was going to align with. So very similar to Korea, guys, very similar to Korea, right? North and South, but, you know, Korea still divided today, Vietnam, you know, not, right? It got reunified. So if you look at the Civil War, you know, America tried to throw in its support because it believed, it had this theory. It was called the domino theory. And the belief was if Vietnam fell under communist rule, right? If Vietnam fell under communist rule, then the rest of Southeast Asia will fall under communist rule. We're talking about Cambodia. We're talking about Laos. We're talking about Thailand and potentially maybe India. So it's kind of like that game you play, right? Setting up those dominoes, right? You tip one over and all of the other dominoes will fall over as well. And that's eventually, that's the mindset that America had in terms of why is it so important to keep Vietnam, you know, non-communist in particular. So from the 1950s up until 1965, America, through its support to support the South Vietnamese government in their effort to remain a free country from communism. But let's just say things didn't work out so well. Things didn't work out so well. So by 1963, boy, oh boy, oh boy, it looks like the South Vietnamese government was on the verge of collapse, right? It was on the verge of collapse. And that was when America decided that maybe the time had come for it to get directly involved, right? To get directly involved. Prior to 1965, America was kind of like what we're doing today with Ukraine, right? We were sending, you know, weaponry, we were sending money, right? We were sending advisors, but never really boots on the ground. But here you have in 1965, America felt like it needed to step in to defend and to help the South Vietnamese government sustain itself. And by 1965, you have the arrival of American troops, right? 1965 to 1968. 1968, you got about 500,000 American troops, right? And they were all in Vietnam thinking that they were going to spread freedom and democracy, and they were going to help the Vietnamese people, right, to live a free life in particular. But the problem is, guys, this war, it just kept dragging on and on and on. You have, you know, the rising cost of this war, okay? You have the death and the destruction of Vietnamese people, but also death of American soldiers who served in this war and their families back at home being impacted by this war, and also the lack of progress. Is that by 1968, America had very little to show, you know, in terms of the progress that it had achieved. And this is something that I think, you know, if you've been paying attention for the last 2 decades, this is something that I think we can all relate to today, right? The war in Afghanistan, the war in Iraq, and how these war just seems like it's a perpetual war. And that's somewhat exactly what happened. So what you have is by 1969, you have America starting to withdraw its troops slowly but surely, because America started to feel like, you know, this might have been a lost cause. Maybe this is the Vietnamese fight, right? We don't really need to get involved in this anymore. So in 1969, America started to pull out its troops slowly but surely. And by 1973, there was a ceasefire that was signed between America, you know, the South Vietnamese government, the North Vietnamese government, ceasefire. Let's put the war on pause. And America was confident that with all the weaponry, with all of the money, with all of the assistance that it had given to the South Vietnamese government, that it would be able to defend itself. It would be able to protect itself. Yeah, that also didn't work out so well, guys. As you can see, this story, it just, every time America just thinks like things are gonna get better, it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. And unfortunately, guys, that is not what happened, is that within less than 2 months, the North Vietnamese forces, they started to infiltrate the South. And guys, by April 1975, the tanks are rolling in to the southern Vietnam capital, the city of Saigon. The tanks are rolling in. It looks like the war is coming to an end. And a city of more than 2.5 million people who, for years, have fought on the American side, have supported America, have allied themselves with America, find themselves panicking, right? Panicking. What do we do now, right? What do we do now? It looks like defeat is on its way, and a city with more than 2.5 million people started to scramble to find an exit strategy, right? I want you to think about maybe about 2 summers ago when America withdrew out of Afghanistan, right? That scene of Afghanis, right, clinging on to American bombers and everything like that. Very similar, guys. This is very similar. What's happening? Okay. Here's what the streets look like in the month April 1975, right? Families are just scrambling to find an exit. I want you to think of like the pandemic that we lived in. Remember those days we were, hoarding food and fighting over toilet paper and everything, but on a much bigger scale, right? On a much bigger scale. So Vietnamese families, they had to scramble to try to find their way out of Vietnam. And the only way to leave in 1975 was with the Americans, right? With the Americans. You got to leave with the Americans. But the problem is, guys, America, again, they were operating on the assumption that everything is going to be okay, right? It's kind of like that dog in the burning fire room, right? That meme, everything is fine, right? So America didn't have an exit strategy. It didn't have a mass evacuation strategy, right? And even when it tried to, well, unfortunately, guys, by April 1975, they bombed the airfield at the airport. So it prevented the Americans from landing big bombers to evacuate people. So make a long story short, guys, all right? What is your ticket out? Helicopters, 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 right? These are your ticket out, right? So the US military, they just kept flying all of these helicopters because these were the only option, right? But getting on these helicopters, guys, was not an easy journey itself, right? Not a lot of room. As you can see in the pictures here, like people are literally clinging on to these helicopters to try to make their way out, right? So here's another chaotic scene of people trying to get onto these helicopters. It's just complete panic and chaos. You can try to get on the American ships by getting onto commercial vessels if you can find one of these. Again, it's just a mad scramble to get out of Vietnam. So whether by helicopter, whether by ships, okay? Here's your last resort right here, right? This is the scene at the US Embassy, right? Tens of thousands of people. This is your last ticket. This is it, right? This is your last ticket out, right? But in order for you to get into this embassy, right, I want you to notice, right, the walls, the barriers, right? The barbed wires, right? There's a gigantic wall that people had to like make their way over. Soldiers with guns, right? Guarding the embassy in particular. I really love these images because it just shows you the chaos, right? But also the fear, the anxiety that people had needing to get out. So this is the chaotic scene, guys. This is the chaotic scene in 1975. And this is the buildup to that last helicopter, right? This is the buildup to that last helicopter. This is your last ticket out, okay? If you're lucky enough to get on one of these planes to leave with the Americans, you will get a chance to leave Vietnam. If you don't, well, that's where we're gonna get to our stories in particular, right? So 1975, you got around 120,000 that were able to leave with the Americans. Eventually, they come to America. These are the four major refugee camps in America. You got one right here in California, Camp Pendleton, down in Southern California. You got one in Arkansas, Pennsylvania, Florida. These are the 4 major camps that were created to resettle the Vietnamese refugees when they come to America, right? And here's an interesting one for you. Right here in the Bay Area, guys, right here in Sacramento, right here in the Bay Area, I just found this out. Apparently there was a smaller refugee camp. It was called Hope Village in Sacramento. And apparently there were like some Vietnamese refugees there. They were just housed there temporarily. Tippi Hedren, she was an American actress. She wanted to help out the Vietnamese refugees. So she came into this camp. She was like, oh, let me help you guys kill time. They saw how beautiful her nails were. So she decided, well, let me help you learn how to do nails. So she bought in a manicurist to teach these women how to do nails. And guys, I don't think I need to tell you much more. The rest is history, right? The rest is history. So it's very amazing that, doing nails and nail salon and the nails industry has its roots in the refugee camps, right? This is quite amazing in particular. And yes, if you're wondering, Professor Nguyen, do you got hookups on, how can I get my nails done? Yeah, stick around after the event, right? I'll hook you up, not a problem, right? So this is 1975, guys, and these are the ones that were lucky enough to leave with the Americans. For those that were left behind, eventually, here are your other options. This is where we get to the boat people, right? The boat refugees. Because after 75, America is going to set up, these refugee camps throughout Southeast Asia. And if you can make your way to these camps, then you can have a chance to be resettled. But guys, getting there was a journey of its own, right? It was an incredible, dangerous journey of its own. Just getting past the patrols, right? The overcrowded ships, the storms that you had to somewhat endure. But also, guys, pirates, right? Pirates. And I'm not talking about the sexy Pirates of the Caribbean, like Johnny Depp type of pirates, right? These are murderous thugs, pirates that preyed upon, vulnerable refugees in particular. Sadly, guys, it is estimated that anywhere between 200,000 up to 500,000 refugees did not make it to the camps, guys, and they lost their lives out in the ocean in particular. But the ones that were lucky enough to make it to the camps, more than 800,000 of them were able to make it to the camps, and eventually they got their chance to get resettled, mainly in America, but also through the other countries that were willing to take them in, right? So these are some of the images from the refugee camps that you can be found throughout somewhat Southeast Asia, right? Overcrowded, lack of food in particular. You see the barbed wire fences. So not an ideal condition. But again, guys, this is not just about the Vietnamese story. This war itself, although also spill over to neighboring countries. So I'm hoping that in future years, we will also get a chance to acknowledge the historical experiences of Cambodians, Laotians, and Hmongs, and their incredible journey to come to this country as well, right? So we definitely want to acknowledge that. So you would think, Vietnamese refugees coming over to America, America would open its doors and welcome these people. Some communities did, right? Some communities did. You have families, you have churches opening their doors, but public opinion, guys, was not very kind to Southeast refugees in particular. More than 62% of those who were polled in 1975 opposed the reselling of Vietnamese refugees in this country. So we weren't welcome here, in terms of public opinion. There were even acts of terrorism that was inflicted upon the community because for some Vietnam War veteran, the fact that Vietnamese refugees were being resettled in America and in their communities, they saw this as a threat. They saw this as the enemy has now arrived on American soil. So the Vietnam War is even more real here in America. So what you're seeing here, this is the Ku Klux Klan terrorizing Vietnamese communities in Texas, burning down their fishing boats. That's what they use for a living in particular. So yeah, we were not welcome in certain communities. This is also where you have this tragic, massacre, school shooting in 1989 in Stockton, where a shooter walked into a school and he targeted specifically, Southeast Asian refugees. He says those boat people own everything. So, that is not to say that Vietnamese Americans somehow had it easy when they first came here. We were subjected to discrimination, violence, and so forth. But still, despite all of these things, many family members continue to see America as a land of opportunity, and this also includes mine. And in the 1990s, as America normalized relations with America, 1993, I got a chance to come over to America. Yes, that is me on there. That is the Nguyen family, right? Fresh out of LAX in 1993, guys, fresh off the plane from 93 till, right? So the community continued to grow. And we have made quite a place for ourselves, right? The Vietnamese American community have made quite a place for ourselves here. All you got to do, guys, is take a drive down on Story Road, Tully Road, right? You know what I'm talking about. My folks know, right? Vietnam Town, Grand Century Mall, get a little taste of Little Saigon, right? So Vietnamese Americans have made quite a place for themselves here, especially in San Jose, where we are 1 out of 10 people in San Jose. And Vietnamese culture, right? Whether it's or food, whether it's entertainment, songs, books, movies, and even politicians. Vietnamese Americans, we have made quite a place for ourselves, right? I hope you know what that bowl of soup up there is, guys. I hope you know what that bowl of soup up there is, guys, right? If you don't, stay after the event, and again, we'll get your nails done and we'll get a nice bowl of pho, right? In particular, right? So made quite a bit for place for ourselves. And the moment I knew, guys, my people have made it in this country. The moment I knew my people have made it in this country, right, was when we got our own reality show, right? That's when I knew, boy, my people have made it. We have made it, right? We got our own trashy reality show, The House of Ho on HBO, guys, right? That's when I knew my people have made it. But I don't want you to be confused by what you see on TV, what you see on the reality show, is that despite our success, there are still a lot of challenges that my community faces. And I'm hoping today, guys, right, you can learn about some of those complexities. You will learn about our journey and see us not as, model minorities, but see us for who we are, right? As people, as human beings with very complicated stories who, yes, we had to face barriers and challenges. We overcame some of it, but we still have much more work to do. And I'm hoping that today's story will help you understand the complexity and not overgeneralize us as a model of success, right? So that's my little presentation for you. I hope that it will help you, contextualize this event for you guys in particular, right? So yeah, I will wrap up my presentation here. I appreciate it, guys. And with no much further to do, right, I would like to somewhat start our presentation by welcoming our guests. I couldn't be more proud of these people that I get to call my colleagues and also my students as well. They are going to share with you their stories. We are going to go in the order of when they arrive. I am going to ask them a series of questions. So as we are going along the way, guys, please feel free to chime in. But at this moment, I would like you to welcome my friend, my colleague, Danny Nguyen. He is the VP of Administrative Support Services here, right? I want you to welcome in Theresa Tran. She is the counselor of EOPS. Some of you might be working with her. We also have Thuy. She is the admin specialist for the social science and humanities somewhat department, right? And also a student of mine, Binh Nguyen. He is going to also share his story as well. So guys, if you guys can just clap those emojis, guys, and welcome these folks in. And yeah, we'll get the conversation going, right? We'll get the conversation going in particular. So let me start off by welcoming Theresa, right? Theresa, I want to bring you into the conversation here. And as we're going along the way, guys, here's the question I'm going to ask to our panel members. So Theresa, okay, I would like you to share with our audience, when did you first know you were going to go to America, and what was your initial reaction, right?
Great. Well, thank you. Hi. And again, thank you to everybody who showed up. I also want to acknowledge that even though we are the panelists, I see a lot of Nguyens and, Trans in the audience. And so this might also be very, potentially you have very strong feelings. So I really want to acknowledge that this might be a difficult subject for you as well. So thank you for sharing the space with us. I also came by plane like Hai, but my story started in 1975, and I consider myself to be one, a proud refugee, proud former refugee, and two, a lucky refugee, because I came before the fall of Saigon in April 26th. So, fall of Saigon happened April 30th. Our family basically got out a couple of days earlier, a few days earlier. And the reason why, and I think, we see this a lot in any culture and country, is because we had a little bit more privilege, right? So there's this element of class that comes into this conversation as well. So I just wanted to share with you a picture of my mother. She is a singer. So her name is Trúc Mai. And if you are of a certain generation, maybe older than 60 or 65 or 70, you might recognize her, right? So my mother was a celebrity. I'm going to stop sharing now. So, she had a very close friend whose husband was a pilot. And so thanks to that connection, we were able to get out of the country. And actually, I never knew when I was leaving because it was a surprise for me. One day I'm at home playing, well, school was closed. So my mom said, okay, we're going to the park, right? So the kids, the three of us and my mom got into a taxi to go to this park. But on the way, we stopped by my grandmother's house, and I saw her through the car, like hugging my grandmother, right? Like really hugging. It's like, well, that's really strange. We're just going to the park, right? So, then we went to the airport, and my mother said, well, crouch down, because if your dad sees us, you're going to be taken back home. I'm like, okay, well, park, what's going on? So I don't think I really understood that I was going to the US until potentially maybe when I was already over here. I think I was 6 years old at that time. So I think I answered your question, Hai.
Yeah, no, you did. That was, and you ended right at the spot. So that one must have been like a very long journey to the park for you. And you said that you didn't realize that you were going to go to America until you arrived in America, Theresa? Is that right?
Yeah, by way of Subic Bay, Guam, Honolulu, Fort Chaffee, Arkansas. We went to that camp, refugee camp, and then Augusta, Georgia, and then my story continues. Yeah.
And were you the whole time asking your mom, like, when are we getting to this park? You keep telling her, right? In particular. Yeah, what an amazing story. Okay, so now, Danny, I want to welcome you in, and same question to you, right? When did you first know you were going to America, and what was your initial reaction?
Well, I want to start with thanking everybody for being here. Really appreciate it. This is great opportunity. I want to thank Hai as well for giving us this opportunity. I tend to kind of see everything and contextualize everything in through my kids. So I have three kids, and they're older now in college, and one still in high school. But my oldest daughter, she gets very easily anxious, so she doesn't like surprises. So anytime that we take her anywhere, when she was 4, if we took her to a family gathering, I would have to sit her down and say, honey, there's going to be a lot of people there, right? They're going to try to speak to you in Vietnamese. They're going to ask you how old you are. They're going to comment on the way that you look. They might ask you to count in Vietnamese so that they can hear all the impressive things that you can do. You're going to smile and you're going to fold your arms and you're going to ciao and say hello to everyone. And then we're going to eat and you're going to hang out with your cousins, and then maybe we'll be home in time for you to watch an episode of The Wiggles. My family escaped when I was 4, and we crossed an ocean, and we spent months as refugees before arriving to the US. And I'm pretty sure nobody told me a darn thing about it. So and maybe they did, and I didn't remember it, or I didn't comprehend it. And I have some memories, but they're just images and just little short video clips. But I do remember being confused. I do remember being disoriented. And I think this was probably exacerbated by the fact that culturally, as a kid, in Vietnam, you're generally dismissed, right? You're often dismissed. You don't really ask questions of your parents. And so, yeah, my parents were probably busy, distracted, just trying to survive and get out of Vietnam. So we were part of that second wave coming out of Vietnam. And there were those like Theresa who left right away. And the people who stayed behind, that was really those folks that really experienced those first couple of years of the oppression, right? The re-education, the brainwashing, the punishment that came along with those who stayed behind. So my dad, he had worked for the Americans at one time as a technician in working in communication systems. And so, yeah, we were part of the families that were somewhat at risk. And so they weren't going to tell me anything, right? Because, I mean, the chance that I might blurt out something to a neighbor, that was just going to get us all thrown in jail. So my parents, like many parents who were plotting to get out of Vietnam, probably had a series of like secret meetings, right? Where they sat down over the dinner table late at night after the kids have already gone to bed. And, they probably talked about how they were going to do that. And so, no, I don't know. I don't have that experience of being told I'm going to go to America. I don't know how I reacted, but I can tell you that I would give anything to be a fly on the wall during those conversations, the many conversations that many families had. Just imagine what that list of pros and cons might have looked like, right? As they were weighing things out. Like, what are the survival rates of people leaving by boat and being refugees at sea, and how that all is going to play out? And how much did despair play into it? And how much did optimism play into it, right? I would just love to be on the fly to hear that. I mean, step 1 is you save up enough money, right, to get smuggled out of the country. Step 2 is, you get out on a boat and you go out at sea and you hope that you don't get separated or captured or killed. But what's step 3? Like, what's the step 3? There was no step 3. So even though as I talk about all this planning that was being done, there was not really, I don't think there was a step 3. So they probably, told me what many parents say, and that is, you're going to go visit relatives. And so if that was the case, then my initial reaction was probably, all right, cool. And then over the next 6 months, I probably asked them, are we there yet? Are we there yet? So I never really learned about it in the conventional sense.
Thank you, Danny. I really appreciate you sharing. So you and Theresa, you guys are very similar, right? Look, a little young, right? Parents didn't loop you guys in terms of like where you guys were going. So yeah, it's a little hard to I would love to be on the wall too, Danny, to hear what those conversations must have been like in particular. But yeah, thank you so much for sharing. All right, let's see here. Thuy, I want to bring Thuy Foot in, and she is going to tell you guys about her journey. So Thuy, the first time you knew you were going to America, what was your initial reaction? Oh, Thuy, you got your mic, yeah.
I'm sorry. Well, first, thank you, Hai, and thank you, panel and everyone for taking the time and join us, listen to our story journey to America. In 1990, my father came home and told us that we got accepted through the program, Orderly Departure Program, provided by the United Nations High Commissioner and Vietnamese government. We go into America. The first initial reaction that after waited for 10 years, we applied, my father and family applied 1979. Waited for 10 years, such a long 10 years. Finally, we made it. So to leave our home and relocate it to the new country can be very disoriented experience. My feeling was my feeling was that I have to live in a strange world where the rules have changed, surrounded by unfamiliar people, and speak the language that is not in the native language.
Oh, Jisoo, I think if you don't mind, this is when I know Jisoo, she's so humble. Because when I first asked her her story, she's like, oh, I don't have an interesting story to tell you or anything like that. So she's like, you got to back up a little bit there, because the story that you told me was
Okay.
quite incredible.
So
you said that 1990 was when you got a chance to leave Vietnam because of the orderly program, right? But I remember you sharing with me that there were a couple of missed opportunities previously that you guys had tried, but things just didn't work out. Would you mind sharing that?
Yeah, it's because I thought that I will follow up to the next question.
Oh,
But
okay.
anyway, having experienced far less drama than what Vietnamese boat people, I felt so lucky. My father was an officer in the South Vietnamese government. On April 29, 1975, the day before Communist tank rolled into Saigon, my father got a pass to receive a message and passes out to the country, but we couldn't make it. In 1978, on the second attempt, my father decided to send me and my sister Jody and my aunt come to America by boat. Again, it didn't success. So finally, thanks to the ODP program that created by the US and Vietnamese, that we start applying in 1979, 1975. And that's what I just say, waiting for 10 years. And finally, 1990, we finally left Vietnam, and our journey began until we stopped and stayed in Thailand, where a refugee camp were already set up to receive 1,000 of Vietnamese refugees. I remember spending a few hours at the air base in Thailand, wondering what had just happened. I was confused and frightened from all the evidence, the army tent, the long line, waiting for food every morning, the guard watching us every single, hours, 24 hours, living with, among the people on the floor, sharing the space. It was horrible. It was, I couldn't imagine that, how, because I was, like young adult. I didn't come here as a young kid like Danny, like Theresa. I was 22 years old at that time. So when we were there, we didn't know that when we actually would go into America, waited desperately and live it among the people, filthy. It was desperate. It was, dying and crying every night. Even though sometimes I have that kind of weird thought that I want to kill myself, and didn't think of that. What does my future look like? Right? How long did I stay in Thailand? So luckily, my family and I spent 5 days in Thailand at that camp. And on day 6, someone came to my family, from my father's, and said that my family, among with first few family, received okay to move out the camp. And the next, we flew to America. On November 8, 1990, finally, we landed America in San Francisco.
Thank you so much, Thuy, for sharing that story. I know it must have been incredibly hard for you to share that with us. You know, I think you're absolutely correct when you pointed out that, you know, you were definitely older than Danny and Theresa when they came. You know, you were, you know, like I think you said you were like in your teenage year or in your 20s, right? When you came over. I can't imagine what that experience must have been like in the camp for you in particular, not knowing that, like, when are we going to get a chance to go? You know, where are we going? I just can't imagine. And I think it's really important that people understand that in particular, right? And I think this is something that all of us could relate to recently, right? I want you to think about March 2020, right? When the pandemic hit, right? And we didn't know, what is this thing? When is it going to end? When are we going to be able to see our loved ones, you know, again, in particular? And I'm not saying they're the same experience, but I think I know some of the anxiety, the feeling that you guys have, right? Or the fear of, like, where are we going? Because I think it's important for us to acknowledge that, Thuy, because there's always this assumption that, like, oh, everybody wants to come to America, right? Like, everybody wants to be happy. Like, everybody must be so happy to, like, know they, no, that's actually not the case, right? Theresa and Danny, they didn't even know they were going to go to America, right? And even you, right? But the fact that you were a little bit, you know, older. Right? It's hard to leave your homeland, your country, right? And to go to a brand new country. So it could be a very different experience, right? Not knowing because of your parents, or knowing and dealing the stress of that, the anxiety of moving into a brand new country, not knowing the language in particular, right? So thank you so much, Thuy, for sharing that. I can't imagine, right?
Thank you.
Yeah, Ben, I want to bring you in here, right? So Ben is a student of mine. So why don't you tell us, Ben, the first time you remember, you know, that you were going to come to America, what was your reaction?
Well, first of all, thank you, Professor Han Nguyen, for inviting me to be a panelist of this wonderful event. And thank you, Danny, Theresa, and Thuy, for sharing your emotion story. And I also have emotion story too to share with you. You know, I still remember on Christmas Eve, 1918, when we have dinner, my brother could call me and say, hey, get prepared for moving to America. Wow, that's a very good news for many Vietnamese people. You see, going to America is a dream of many people, but the news make me more worried than happy. You may ask why? Because I had a very good job at the time in terms of opportunity to travel around the world, because I'm a managing editor of the leading business news company in Saigon. That's Professor Han Nguyen said, the capital of southern Vietnam. And also now it's a commercial hub of Vietnam. And so, to move or not to move, that's the question, the very big questions. And I sat down and talked to my wife. Oh, no. What would we do in America? First, my wife didn't want to go too. So, well, to move or not to move, that's the question. But finally, we make decision to move for the benefits of our children, because we know that in America, our children will have better education, and so they will have a better life. And one more thing I would like to share with you, that I went to America under the sponsorship of my mom. But 4 years before that, that's mean in 2014, I refused a chance to go to America under the sponsorship of my brother. And at that time, my brother asked me why I didn't go. I say again, because my first twin daughters was still a baby. They were a few months. So we refused. We decided not to go. And it is the second chance for us to go to America. If we refuse, that means again no more opportunity to immigrate to America. So that's why we make decision. That's a very hard decision for us.
Thank you, Ahmed, for sharing your story. I really love your story. It's just because in some ways it shows the progress that somewhat Vietnam has made since the war in particular. That I think that from my collection, you know, I was 8 years old when my family said that we're going to go to America. And I had a very good perception of what America was going to be, because my brothers who fled in the 80s as boat refugees, you know, in the 1990s, they had made it, right? They had made it. They had opened up their own businesses. One was an engineer. So they sort of made it into the middle class. So every time they would come back to visit us in Vietnam, they would always bring back, you know, toys, candy, and chocolate. And this is before like Vietnam normalized relations with America in 1996. So back then you had to like smuggle stuff in, right? So this is why I will always have very fond memory of two things: Hershey's chocolate and Tang, right? Because those are the items that my brothers always brought back to Vietnam as a treat for me. So like American chocolate, just the smell of Hershey chocolate just reminds me of my youth and of like a taste of America. So in many ways, I was like the Vietnamese, I don't know, like Willy Wonka, kind of like, oh, you know, Hershey's chocolate. I'm gonna go to the land of Hershey's chocolate, right? And I'm gonna get to drink all the Tang that I want. So it was a very exciting trip. You know, my family threw a big birthday bash, kind of like a going away party. Everybody just sort of walked up to my house and just said, "Hi, you made it. Like, you're gonna go to America. And I'm like, yeah, it's gonna be awesome, right? I'm gonna get to eat all the chocolate I want." So I think in many ways, I think this is why I invited you guys on, because the complexity, right? That Danny and Theresa, you guys didn't even know that you're going to Vietnam, right? Because of the circumstances that you guys were in, right? Because, you know, the war just ended and there was a lot of things going on. And Thuy, right, missed opportunities, but she came at such a later age. So it was hard for her to somewhat transition. But, you know, by the time you get to the 1990s, you know, Vietnamese immigrants like myself, I mean, we see America as a land of opportunity, right? We couldn't be more excited to come to this country. And then you get to you, Ben, in the 2010, where Vietnamese now are having second thoughts. Like, do I want to go to America? Like, is it really the land of opportunity? Because like you said, right, the reason why we want to come to America is to make money, right? It's to own property, right? It's to get rich, right? But you admitted that, like, I already have those things. So it's like, why am I going to go for it, right? So I think it just shows you somewhat the progress that Vietnam has made as a country. The fact that, like, you know, there are jobs and there are opportunities over there. And you have some immigrants that are like second guessing it, right? Whereas, you know, in the 1990s for my family, there was no second guessing. It was like as if we won the lotto, right? So this is why I really love all of our experience, because, you know, it could be from 75 to the last 2 years, right? That's what the first generation is in particular. So so thank you so much, guys, for sharing your, you know, story, your reaction, and how you got to America. So now the next question I want to ask was, okay, so you arrive in America. What were your expectations? What America was going to be? And did America live up to those expectations that you have? So let's go in the same order again. Theresa, we're going to come back to you, right? So you kind of make your way through the camps, come to America. Did you have any expectation what America was going to be? And did America live up to those expectations that maybe you and your family have?
Sure. So I'll just share another photo. This is just going back again to when I was in the camps, and I just love this picture because this is basically like the one one suitcase that we had when we left Vietnam. And that's me sitting on my aunt's lap, and that's my mother in the glasses behind. And yeah, so she came to get us out. So basically, I was at Fort Chaffee in Arkansas. And then after that, my aunt and uncle lived in Augusta, Georgia. So they drove over to Arkansas to pick us up. So my sisters and I, the three of us, stayed with my aunt and uncle. And then my mother, by herself, pre-internet, went over to Camp Pendleton in California to find my stepdad, right? So I don't even know how somebody does something like that without knowing English. But it's just an extraordinary story for me of what my mother, you know, again, who had a very privileged life. Well, she grew up very poor, but then she didn't work, you know, since she was maybe like 18 to do this, right? So I just, again, I have so much gratitude for my mom. I didn't really have any initial expectations. Again, just being so young, I think that really did help to, you know, protect me in many ways. And I think kids are quite resilient as well. One thing that I do remember is, you know, my older sister, who is 3 years older than me. So she did ask, you know, Mom, if I stay here long enough, will my hair turn blonde as well? So we did probably have this idea that when we become Americans, we're going to start looking, you know, maybe white or whatever. And so after actually we left Georgia to go to Nebraska, because my stepfather my late stepfather was a doctor. And so he actually got sponsored to participate in this program, medical school program, where the state of Nebraska helped to retrain about 30 Vietnamese doctors. And in return, you would have to go and work. And so we resettled in a small town in between Omaha and Lincoln, 2,000 people or so. I think that's the size of Independence High School, actually, right? So we, you know, basically lived in a very small town. And again, I would like to say that I was so fortunate, because I think the town, for the most part, welcomed us. You know, we were so lucky in that the people banded together and gave us, you know, the place to stay, and they gave us like our utensils and, you know, just furniture and everything like that. Of course, I changed my name, right? Theresa is my baptismal name. A lot of us, I think at that time, we were second-class citizens. You know, we didn't feel the right to use our own name because we always thought about other people. They're not going to be able to, you know, pronounce it, right? And so it was just automatic. So I'm Theresa, my sister's Veronica, and I have a sister named Lily, right? Well, that was her nickname too. So I think it already started at that point where I kind of was like, you need to fit in, you know, you're not really American yet, so you need to play nice. But again, we were very fortunate in that our community welcomed us. I think that's not the case for all refugees, as you showed, you know, in your presentation. But for the most part, I mean, we did have, you know, people calling us late at night sometimes, saying things to my stepfather, you know, and it's just kind of like, okay, that was a weird phone call, right? Click. But for the most part, I think we were very fortunate that we were embraced by our community.
Yeah, kudos to you, Theresa. Well, no, shout out to your mom, because, you know, to drive across America, to go from a diva, you know, an affluent diva, and then coming to America, not knowing the language, and to some of the younger folks out there, you know, this is before Google Maps. Right? This is before Twitter, DMs, and, you know, back then you literally had to make a phone call, right? The telephone booth and everything like that. So kudos to your mom for being able to just go cross country. And I don't know if you guys ever seen the movie Minorities. It's a story of a Korean immigrant family that moves out to, like, I don't know, the Midwest somewhere. It's a great independent film that just came out recently. So Theresa, when you tell me your story of a Vietnamese family in the middle of, you know, Arkansas, that's where you guys were at? Theresa, like,
Well, that was the refugee camp. We went to Georgia and then Nebraska.
Oh, Nebraska. Yeah. I mean, like your story is literally like the Vietnamese minority, right? Like, you know, you're just out in Nebraska and you're like probably like the one few Vietnamese, or dare I say even Asian family out there, right? But yeah, we'll get to, I love how you brought up the point about your name and everything, but we'll get to that in a second. All right, Danny, how about yourself, right?
Well, I think I really appreciate this question. I think it really kind of helps us to reflect on kind of who we're asking and when you left Vietnam and under what circumstances and all that. So as I shared, we were there for 2 years living under that oppression. So if you ask my parents, then of course, they're looking for anywhere that would give them opportunity, right, and freedom, and for their kids to have more opportunity. So I think for them, it probably met some expectations. For me, I don't know if I had many expectations. I think that after spending all those weeks at sea, and then 2 months kind of docked on the shores of Malaysia, and we were really lucky at the time because there's a lot of boats back then that got pushed off, right? People basically were denied. And so we were there at the shore. Finally, we were pushed off to the island of Bidong. So we were on Bidong for 3 months. And that was before it was kind of created as an official refugee camp in 1978. So this is in 77. So it was still very primitive, and just that Vietnamese spirit. There's nothing short of heroic in terms of what those people did to set things up and get things in place. But having gone through all of that, like I think my expectation was just normalcy, like just getting back to normal. Like, hey, when are we gonna get back to like what you said, visiting family, and and having a normal life. And aside from that, like you hear on the way, you hear things about America being the land of, just a great land, and people being rich and everybody's comfortable and everybody's got what they need. And so, early on when I first landed here in San Jose, I was, that was kind of reaffirmed, right? Just seeing all the elevators and escalators and airplanes and freeways, it was like, oh my God, okay, this looks like the land of opportunity that everybody's been talking about. And then come to find that, that transition that I had been through for 6 months out on the ocean and on an island, that was just the beginning. The big transition was really ahead of us. And so I think, it met expectations in some ways, and in other ways it kind of didn't. And that freedom piece is something that, I want to touch on a little bit later, because freedom cuts both ways. And I think for us, in terms of family dynamics and in terms of that, feeling conflicted about, our culture and other things, I think that freedom came at a price. And so can share a little bit of that more. But overall, I think, yeah, if you were that second wave like we were, it met expectations by way of just providing a better opportunity.
All right. Thank you, Danny, for sharing that. And then, yeah, Thuy, I want to pull you in here, right? What were your expectations of America, and did America meet up to your expectations?
It's a good question, Hai. Thank you. Like any other Vietnamese immigrants, and we all come here because American dream. So the idea of this country is that we looking for the freedom, the equality, and the opportunity, a traditional that whole to be available to all Americans. American dream had changed over the time. I remember the time that I arrived, the community, the Vietnamese community is very small. And wherever we go, we don't see many Vietnamese a restaurant, or if we want to, go buy a Vietnamese, like for example, fish sauce, or some Vietnamese ingredient, it was so hard to find. But now you can see it's really possible that you can feed, even though you go Safeway, you can find this sauce. You can find some special, tea that, ingredient is a Walmart, Target. It's just amazing that, that it changed. And also I see that American is accepting an open armor with a Vietnamese, with Asian Vietnamese, immigrants. And then we see, I'm so happy that I see that, that the Vietnamese community is growth. And now wherever you go, you see the Vietnamese restaurant everywhere. You see Vietnamese people, you see Vietnamese students around campus, you see Vietnamese college, friends and faculty, Vietnamese faculty, you see Vietnamese administrations everywhere that you work with or anywhere place you go. And I am happy to be here, and I could not even think of any more that, to say that.
No, that's all you gotta say, right? That's all you gotta say, and
Yeah.
I think all of us here can relate to what you mean. Like I said earlier, boy, I know where people made it when we got our own reality show on HBO. You know what I mean? So I know exactly what you mean. It's hard to. I remember. Well, I'll say a little bit more, but yeah, Ben, I want to pull you in here, right? So your brother says you're coming to America. Did you have any expectations of what America was going to be, and did America live up to your expectations?
Well, frankly speaking, I didn't expect much from America, because at that time I thought that my life would be more difficult in America than in Vietnam, because when I come to America, I have nothing. I have to start from the beginning. That's very hard again for me, for a man again who not young enough. So I didn't expect again much from America, but I needed to go for the benefits of my children. And it's interesting again to share with you that again I was again fortunate to go to America in 2011. I was invited by the Department of Education under the U.S. Department of State to join a course on business accountability. Yeah, and I have opportunity to move again around again from Washington to Minnesota and other states again of America. And I observed that again life in America wasn't easy again on. People have to work very hard to pay again for their bills. So that's mean again. So when my brother again called me, and I thought that again, oh man, my life again wouldn't be rosy again in America. So, but when I came here, for the first few months, I have again no job. Life was so boring. Again, just stay home. And at that time, I didn't have again license again, so I couldn't again try around. Again, just stay home and walk to park. Life was so boring. But again, after that again, I saw again some change again. I got license, driving license, and I found again a job with a minimum wage. It's okay because I have something again to do to kill again my time again. Yeah, right. Kill my time again. But now again, so far so good, because again my children love school very much. So that's mean again maybe American lives up to the expectation of my children. What I expect for my children, not for me. Yeah, that what again I'm happy again about again America, because my children love school and they also love America.
Thank you, Ben, for sharing that story. I'm so glad that you're on here, because like growing up, I I was too young to understand any of this history. And, you know, as you guys know, Vietnamese American families, we're not really known for, you know, busting out the old history books, right? And talking about these type of stories in particular. But now that I am older, I also have 2 young children of my own. I am now realizing the sacrifices that we make as parents, right? To give our children a better opportunity, even when it comes to at our own detriment in particular, right? But the things we do as parents, right? And all that work, and what do we get? Daddy this, daddy that, right? They're never happy. But what are you gonna do? But no, I really love you guys' story because, you know, in many ways, I think I remind my students this all the time. 2 things can be true at the same time, right? Like 2 things can be true at the same time. That yes, does America offer folks like me better opportunities? Absolutely, right? Absolutely, right? But like Danny mentioned earlier, nothing is ever given, right? Like nothing is ever given, and it's always an uphill battle. And I think people forget sometimes how isolated America can be, especially when you don't speak the language, right? And you are an outsider, right? You are an immigrant, right? And even though America, we embrace multiculturalism and we say this nation is a nation of immigrants, right? But we know that when we come to America, we have that mindset, right? We're an outsider, right? We're just a visitor here, or this is America, right? And we're just happy to be here in particular. And you know, my expectation is like you guys said, you know, I was gonna go to the land of chocolate, right? I was gonna go to the land of chocolate. And I remember being so amazed, simple things like the airport, being on a plane, right? Getting picked up in an automobile, in cars that my brother owned, because owning a car in Vietnam was like a luxury. And in America, you know, my brother owned not only 1 car, but like 2 cars. And just going to the supermarket and seeing the access to food, it was just like, mind-blowing to me, right? Like how rich and affluent and the opportunities that are here. But at the same time, I saw on a daily basis my parents, you know, going from being a shop owner in Vietnam to now working in a sweatshop, you know, cutting thread on jeans, on close-up article, you know, for 5 cents a piece, working day and night, right? And I just see. And as a young child, I always questioned, why the hell did we leave? Like, I don't understand, because in Vietnam, you know, we were affluent, right? We were middle class, and we had a home, we had a thriving business. We even had servants. Like we even had servants from the countryside. It was my cousins that like had came into the city, and they would cook for us. They would like, you know, they would watch me, they would play with me, and I didn't have to do a damn thing, right? Coming over to America, I was like, why did we leave that for? Like, I don't understand, you know, to come to America, not being able to speak the language and having to drive everywhere. This is something I don't think Americans understand, that like in Vietnam, you don't have to drive anywhere, right? Because everything is so close by, right? Food, coffee shops, and they will deliver your food to your house, and they will pick up the dirty dishes from your house. And I'm just like, why did we leave? I don't understand. So as a young kid, I never understood this. And then coming to America, my parents working day and night, and I would just be at home all the freaking time, all by myself. It was such a lonely and isolated place. So I can't imagine what, you know, you guys' experience would have been. And I think this is something that, you know, most non-Vietnamese people do not know, right? You guys just assume that like, oh, you guys are happy to be here and like everything is good and you guys are a model of success. No, there's a lot of psychological barriers and challenges that we have to overcome, you know, language barrier, mental health, depression, isolation, right? Self-doubt and feeling like a perpetual foreigner, right? In particular. So it's such an incredible experience, but also, you know, full of challenges. And I want to talk a little bit more about those challenges a little bit, guys. So, you know, this process, right? Assimilation. Look, I know it's an outdated term, right? I know it's an outdated term. Assimilation is the idea that like we can just come to America, pick up a few habits, and we will transform, right, to become American, and like we will be embraced. So I want to circle this back. You know, how was the process for you guys? You know, what were some things that you guys did to somewhat assimilate, right? To fit in, or another word, to earn your American card, right? To earn your American card, right? To have society just look at you not as an outsider, not as a refugee, right? Not as an immigrant, but as an American. So I wonder what that process was like for you guys. So Theresa, I'm gonna run it back with you. What was the process of assimilation for you?
Again, I think my story might be a bit of an outlier because, you know, as much as we were humble, you know, refugees coming over here, we benefited once again from our status. You know, my stepfather coming over as a doctor of this small town where we were able to be respected by people. You know, they might have had their prejudices, but they didn't necessarily show it, right? But then we also had other Nebraskans who really embraced us as well. I think when we left Nebraska after the contract ended, we moved to California, and that's when things changed, right? So first I went to Visalia for a year, and then I ended up in San Jose. But that's where there was anonymity, and I think you know, I lost that support system, maybe just one from childhood, you know, friends, the church. So there was no longer as much of a social support structure. So I think, you know, and there's research out there that one of the strongest indicators of people who experience PTSD is the amount of social support that they get or don't get, right? And so I think I was very lucky when I came over originally that I did have that support, you know, from the community. But I think, you know, coming over to California, now I saw a lot of other races, and you know, this was the Latinos starting to come into the mix as well, experiencing racism on that, you know, part. Me also never seeing, you know, Mexican Americans before, and what were my thoughts and my ignorant, you know, preconceptions about them as well. So it was you know, just I think, and also coming into being a teenager as well, it was difficult, I think, just trying to blend in. I found refuge in school. So after Visalia, came to San Jose, and Danny and I are kind of from the same hood, actually. I went to one middle school, JW Fair, and he went to Silverdale. And that was a little bit of a rough part of town, right? And I wasn't used to that. Again, I was this little, you know, girl from Hicksville. And so I just kind of, you know, try to bury myself into studies and model minority myths. Sure, bring it on. You know, that's where I'm going to get the acknowledgement and the appreciation and protection from gangs. You know, I'm going to do that because that was also the first time I was introduced to gangs, right? So I think for me, assimilating, having started out in Nebraska with a bunch of, you know, just like being in the white community, it really shaped me a lot to being more comfortable, I think, with that culture, right? Probably more so than with the Vietnamese culture, because in our town, we only had like one other Vietnamese family. And it wasn't until I was 13 when I started to have Vietnamese friends again.
Did you sort of struggle, Theresa, between, I know I did, you know, are you more American? Are you more Vietnamese? Right? Because sometimes you go the American side, and there's a part of you that feels like, back in the day, like I'm Vietnamese, right? Like, you know, there's certain traditions. So I wonder, did you sort of struggle with that dual identity a little bit?
You know, and I will be honest, so I studied psychology and sociology at UC Santa Cruz. So that was quite a liberal, you know, college as well. And that's where I learned about internalized oppression. That was what I had, you know. When I was in junior high school, there was another Asian kid in our class. Both of us avoided each other like we were just pariahs, right? We did not want to be seen with the other Asian kid because everybody thought we were boyfriend and girlfriend, or, you know, related or something like that, right? So we just wanted to be like our own person, right? We were all individuals, but I had a lot of stuff that I needed to, you know, work on for myself, because I definitely bought into that banana, you know, sort of like complex that I am definitely white on the inside. It wasn't until I went to Santa Cruz where I think I was able to really, you know, examine that a lot more.
Cool. Thank you so much, Theresa. I appreciate you sharing your story. Danny, how about yourself?
Well, I think mine is somewhat of a converse of Theresa's, right? But I want to set the stage a little bit because you talked a little bit about the, you know, anti-Vietnam War sentiments, right? But in 77, when we arrived to the US, you know, there was still a lot of anti-Vietnamese sentiment, just because, you know, Americans wanted to forget that whole Vietnamese fiasco, right? And at the same time, a lot of the civil rights and social movements, you know, from the 60s and the 70s, early 70s was starting to wane. The economy wasn't good. You know, jobs, inflation was high, jobs were being lost. And so for an immigrant coming into a circumstance like that is not easy. And I think it was easy for us to feel very foreign. It was easy to be racialized. So that was the context that we came in. But I was somewhat insulated from that because I wasn't school age yet. So we holed up in a small apartment at the end of Lock Drive, which is kind of in the center Andrew Hill area. And those of you who may not know Lock Drive, that's kind of where a lot of little businesses started, like those side hustles where you would go to get thick gun and, like, you know, little Vietnamese delicacies and stuff like that. And they were selling those out of their home. So I was in that little enclave. And so it wasn't until I went to school that I really had a difficult time. You know, and you think that after having risked everything and losing everything, that there wouldn't be anything that would scare us or intimidate us. But man, when I started school, that turned out to not be true. You know, I thought we could get through anything. If we get through a Malaysian camp for 3 months, we could get through, you know, like, but that wasn't the case. So I think I lived the typical immigrant experience, right? Though, you know, I've shared stories about my name, having difficulties about that, and just many instances of just not feeling different and seeing those around me at the time not really stepping up to help, right? Whether it be my parents because they don't have the agency, or they didn't have the language, or they didn't know how, from school administrators to teachers. I mean, I have just so many stories. Like, I broke my finger one time playing tetherball. I don't know if those of you know tetherball. There's this pole and so I tried to jump up and get something untangled, and there was the chain links, right? My finger got caught in it. And so when I came down, my finger broke basically in half. I came into this classroom. I didn't really know how to tell my teacher this, but they basically said, nah, you know, just be a good boy and just sit down, and, you know, and so I later found out that my finger was broken, and my doctor was like, how come your teacher didn't like, but that's kind of how, you know, things went back then. We just didn't know how to advocate for ourselves, you know. I have so much shame from wanting to assimilate. I mean, like, I lied. I just straight up, I would have like, I'd reference something like I'd say Thule Road, because my parents called Thule Road, right? And then my friends would laugh at me. And then the next day I'd go into school trying to concoct this story. It's like, oh, no, I didn't mean Thule. I meant Tours Road. You know, I know Thule. I mean, everybody knows Thule, you know, and just little instances like that. Like, my friends came over and my mom was cooking like fresh soybean milk, right? The sweetened kind. And I wanted my friends to try it. I was excited. I was like, I love this stuff. You guys should try it, right? So like 5 of my friends tried it, and they all like just spit it out. And so I was so embarrassed. And they're like, how are you drinking this? And I was like, oh, you know what? My mom gives me this special pill where like it tastes good to me, but it probably doesn't taste good to you guys. But to me, it tastes like just this delicious like sweetness. So it's that kind of lying. Like, I even told people like I was like Chinese, Filipino, Japanese, anything but Vietnamese. Like, back then we thought the Filipinos were like the coolest people, man. They had soul, they had swagger, they didn't have these weird names. And like, I wanted to be like Filipino, you know? And so like, there's just so much shame that came with it. Now, later, so much guilt, right? And I think about like that immigrant story and my family, and just how like resourceful my parents were, and the time that my parents took to make clothes for me, and how ashamed I was, but so proud of it now. Like, my parents, you know, mending me clothes, alchemy, you know, like buttoned up stuff, boxers. Like, nobody's wearing boxers back then. I was sporting the boxers. You know, my dad making me like custom bed, like custom fit to me. Like, my friends would come over and, you know, and I'd be ashamed of it. But I guess I just think about that today, and I'm just so proud of my parents. But it's a lot of mixed emotions around that. And then now, of course, you know, struggling with just being that first and a half generation, and that push and pull and that conflict of being Vietnamese versus being American. And that's something that, you know, it still continues today. And it caused a lot of turmoil. A lot of families, I know out there, a lot of families fought over this. And that was the freedom piece, right? So as your parents were thinking, okay, I gave my kids freedom, and with that freedom, what are they doing with it? They're trying to be white. They're trying to be American. They're not listening to us. They're not being respectful. They're thinking individualistically. They're not thinking about the family. So all of that comes with a lot of pain and guilt, and I think most of us are probably still working through that today. So that's the process, but it's an ongoing process.
Danny, I'm still grappling around the fact that you're like, oh, it was harder for me on the east side than in the Malaysian, refugee camps. So no, yeah, I'll add on to like some of the things you share. So a lot to unpack there. How about yourself, Ji Sui? What was the process for you?
Okay, also, as you know, that came to America as a young adult, I missed so many opportunities. I could not even get into a school to learn the language. And of course, learning a new language barrier is one of the main challenges for immigrants that face. I do not even know how to speak English. And so finding school for me, it was so difficult. I mean, it's like so many challenges and barriers that I face is not only just the language barriers, but the lack of the employment opportunity. I couldn't find a job if I don't speak English. Can you imagine that you don't speak English where the place that you live in? Housing opportunity or access to medical services or transportation issue. You don't know how to speak English. How you can get or ask direction? So you don't know you don't know English. You cannot go to take a driving test or take a written test to get your license, to drive a car. So there's in the culture differences. And so how do I do to fit in here in America? Of course, I attend a couple evening for other adult. It's an English, ESL, English as the second language. I have to adopt the new costume, adjusting a new food and cuisine in America. I mean, I have been eating Vietnamese food for 22 years. And when you go out and you don't see many Vietnamese food, and what you do, you eat, hamburger or pizza, all the American food. And it's just new to me. And changing the way appearance, the way how I dress, modifying the behavior to conform with the new social norm, especially making friends, people from a new culture. It was a nightmare for me when I try to adjust, when I try to make myself into that, how to, adjust that. It was so darn hard for me. And that's what my experience in various challenges that I faced when I first came here in America.
Thank you, Thuy. Thank you so much for sharing your story. All right, Ben, how about yourself? What was the process like for you?
Well, I can say, again, we came here just a few months again before the pandemic. Oh man, during the pandemic again, this was a horrible period. Yeah, and a restaurant again closed, and I miss again Vietnamese food. Oh, it's was difficult for me to find Vietnamese food at that time, but finally again the pandemic is over, and again discrimination again is also again my major challenge. Again I remember again, the first time again I got my first job again at the company in Fremont, and again, I heard about discrimination between the Asians and white people, but again, at the company I got discrimination again from Vietnamese immigrants who came here from again I think again 1975 again to again 80. and of course they settle down and they have like houses, and they are middle income earners. And I just arrived here, and so somehow they look down on me and like a poor man. Oh man, I have sometimes I feel I'm shocked at the time. And you know, during the pandemic, the government give our relief package, right? I have like $3, and I got a few $1,000. And someone at the company say, hey, the company the government gave money to your children because we pay tax for the government. See? Oh man, I feel shocked at that time, but I kept silent. I think there's a sort of discrimination, right? That's right, or bullying. I don't know, but I feel shocked at that time. But I think, oh, okay, that's part of life, and I have had to accept that because I'm a newcomer here. So so another challenge is that language barrier, like Thuy said earlier. You know, I spoke English, yeah, but again not fluently, and it's well difficult for me to understand what Americans said on the first years when I hear. I try to get the main point and sometimes they ask me question I didn't understand yeah, for sure. And so I kept silent so but later on I try to improve my listening and speaking skill. So now I'm confident to say that it's okay now. And the third challenge is that to take care of my children's 3 daughters. You know, my wife still lives in Vietnam. That means I myself take care of my 3 daughters. So how to balance my personal and family committees? I have a full-time job. I go to school too, and taking care of my 3 daughters. Well, it's a very tough job for me, but I try my best and go to school. And to tell you tell the truth that come later classes admission college, I think is very challenge for me, yeah, because you know I don't have much time to for my studies, but I try my best. As I said with Theresa earlier, yeah, and yes, that the 4 challenges that I face in America during my process of assimilation. Yeah.
Thank you, and Ben, for sharing your story. Now I feel really bad for assigning you essay exam, knowing that you got $3 to take care of, and
I never missed that line, right?
No, you don't. No, that just, I'm still amazed, but I love you guys' story in so many ways because I think we see some commonalities, right? There's a sense of, the language barrier, right? That it's hard to navigate in America, without understanding the language. And even when we adopt the language, right, there is still a sense of like insecurity because everybody look at us like, what is that accent you have? Like, what is that accent that you have, right? So there's always a sense of like insecurity when we speak out in public and when we go out. And the food, right? Like the food, I remember in the early 90s, it was just so hard to get a taste of home because, the recipes weren't available. It's not like today where you can just go to Costco and like Safeway and like buy fish sauce, right? Like fish sauce is cool now. Like everybody use fish sauce for cooking. But I remember like you, Danny, right? Having my friends over and like, they're like, what's for lunch? And I'm like, braised catfish? Like, that's for lunch. And they're like, what is a catfish? And what do you do with that? I'm like, oh, it's delicious, right? And you would bring it to lunch and everything, and everybody would just kind of look at you weird, like, what is that smell? And then you would lie like, oh no, this is like a Vietnamese Lunchables or something, right? In particular. So getting a taste of home. But just, I think the challenge for me was just wanting to fit in, like you, Danny, right? Like hiding my Vietnamese identity, because I live in a town where we were the only Vietnamese family, even though there were other Asians there, right? I was the only Vietnamese in school. So I never really felt like I fitted in. They always saw me as an outsider. And the fact that, back then they didn't have those ESL courses, or there weren't those support services program. So I remember just being dropped into my 4th grade class. And thank you, Mr. Rogers. Thank you for Mr. Rogers for being ahead of your time, for being a tech guy and being ahead of your time. And he just sort of looks at me like, what am I supposed to do with you, right? Like, do you speak any English? And I was like, just like not shake my head. I'm like, I don't even know what you're saying right now. So what he did was he just parked me in the back of the classroom, and he would just have me play on his computer to learn, English, word by word, letter by letter. And then he would ask a classmate to tutor me, every day outside of the classroom, which was great. Like, you had some wonderful people that stepped up, but it also made me feel like I was being picked upon. Like, why am I the only person, just out here? And everybody just knew me as like that kid, right? Oh, Hi's that kid that like I taught English to. So that was always a joke that people made in my life. And growing up, I always like, okay, I get it. I owe you, blah, blah, blah. So the language barrier was such a big thing. And even when I started speaking English, because, I came over to America at such an early age, I just remember it was just so easy for me to pick up English because I was just so young. I was like 9 years old, right? But at the time, we didn't have those support services. And this is why I will always be a paying member for PBS and Sesame Street, because every day in 4th grade, I would run home. And even during the summer, I would watch Sesame Street every day. So I can learn the alphabet, I can learn pronunciation, I can learn words, right? Sight words and everything like that. So shout out to Elmo, right? For helping a brother out and everything like that, learning English. And then, like you said, Ben, I don't think the most blatant form of discrimination I face are from other people. So like some of the most genuine, nice people I have ever met in my life were non-Asians. Right? I had a white neighbor that always allowed me to come into their home. I had Black neighbors, Mexican neighbors that always opened their homes up to me. But the problem was we never opened up their home or homes to them, because my parents had stereotypes of certain people, Black and brown, because of all the movies they watched. And they always accuse like, oh, don't let that kid in. They might steal our stuff. I'm like, I do go over to their house and eat all of their stuff, right? Like, if anything, I'm the thief. But they never understood that, right? So the racism in our community is real, right? But I think the hardest for me is the fact that I'm generation 1.5, meaning that like I came to America at such an early age. I was never accepted by anybody within the community, right? The Vietnamese American kids that are born here, they always saw me as a fob, fresh off the boat, right? You're an immigrant, like you're not one of us, right? So they set me aside. But the fact that I picked up English at such an early age, and I listen to hip hop and I listen to pop culture and everything like that, the fobby kids, the fresh off the boat immigrant kids, never saw me as one of their own either. So I never fit in anywhere within the Vietnamese American community. And I think the most blatant form of discrimination that I have faced is actually from within. I remember sophomore year, moving to Milpitas High, wanting to fit in, wanting to learn more about my own culture, Vietnamese American culture. So I walked into VSA, which is the Vietnamese Student Association, because I wanted to be, more in touch with my own community, my own culture. And I remember walking in there, and the student looks at me and he goes, "The fuck you doing here?" I said, what do you mean? Like, I'm Vietnamese. Like, I want to join this club. He was like, no. You don't belong here. I said, what are you talking about? I'm Vietnamese. Like, this is VSA, ain't it? He goes, no. Not for you. You're not the Vietnamese we're looking for. And I just felt so burned by that. I just felt so burned by that because it's like, I don't fit in with white kids. I don't fit in with Black kids. And here, my own people is like shunning me for wanting to get more in touch with like my own culture, but they saw me as like whitewash or blackwash. So they just said, no, get the hell out of here. So ever since 10th grade, I just been like, you know what, like, I want no part of this, right? I want no part of Vietnamese culture. I want no part of the Vietnamese community. So I just went completely opposite. But thank goodness I did make some friends who were Vietnamese that were very kind to me. So if you told 19-year-old Hai that like one day I'm gonna be doing a presentation about first generation Vietnamese American and we need to be proud to be Vietnamese, I would be telling you like, you're fucking lying, right? Yeah, like you're lying, there's no way. I hated my own culture back then. I hated my own people. But it's amazing where we are, right? It's amazing where we have come as a community. And I am so lucky to have so wonderful Asian American mentors, you know, who just show me the light that like, I need to embrace my culture. I need to be proud of my culture. And the fact that, you know, I live here in San Jose, I work here at Mission College. I couldn't be more proud now to be a Vietnamese American, but it took a long time. It took a long time. I'm not gonna lie to you guys, but we're about to wrap up here, guys. But you know, I can't leave without asking the panel this last question, is that how do you think your identity as a Vietnamese refugee or a Vietnamese immigrant shape your role here at Mission College, right? You know, we're living in the day and age of identity politics and cultural empowerment. So I wonder to the members of the panel, like, how does your role as a Vietnamese refugee or immigrant empowers you to do what you do here at Mission College? So Theresa?
Yeah, just briefly, I will say, you know, again, I call myself a proud former refugee, right? I embrace that title as a refugee. I'm not an immigrant, you know, I'm not just American, not just Vietnamese, because again, our experience is different. Like you said before, we didn't want to come here. And I think, like you said, so many people don't understand that. So I will always advocate for the underdog, right? And I think that's what brought me into my field and to help others. And I try to bring, you know, my experiences and my empathy to help the students who I counsel.
All right, fantastic. Thank you, Theresa. How about yourself, Danny?
So I think, you know, you getting a sense of kind of our collective understanding of, you know, who we are and the background and how it plays into, you know, our profession, right, as educators and as a student in the system. So I think you can see why we would have that perspective of how badly our system needs educators who respect diversity, right, and make students feel like they belong, because it can have so much impact on a student, right? There's just so much positive impact that we can all have, but at the same time, there's so much trauma that we can inadvertently cause, right, when there's an absence of it. So I think all of us here have been on both ends of that. And I think that I'll say that I'm indebted to, you know, even with all these stories and what I've shared, you know, indebted to all the educators that really came before me that helped pave the way. I mean, people tried, right? And you know, people have made us who we are, and I'm in particular have benefited from that. So I'm very, very, very fortunately. I also acknowledge that I'm seeing things through a lot of different lenses, right? So I have that lens of kind of like, as an educator, I'm also going, okay, I'm also an immigrant, right? That experienced this trauma and this discrimination by the system, right? But I'm also a product of the system, right? I've benefited greatly from the system, right? So I've got like mixed emotions about that. You know, as a teacher in that system, I also know that at one point I've had power over my students, right? And now I'm thinking back to the stories of when I experienced that as a student, and I didn't feel like I had power, and I couldn't tell a teacher I had a broken finger, and what that means now, right? I'm also a stakeholder. I've got kids now that are going through this system, right? And they're being shaped by the system. And then now what does all that mean? And ultimately now I'm deeply embedded. I'm part of this system. I'm a cog in the system. I'm a decision maker at the college. And so what does that mean then? What is my responsibility? And taking everything that I've experienced and looking through all these various lenses, you know, what's my part in all this, you know, and how can it's profound for me to think about. We've been spending the last 2 hours sharing our experiences, a lot of it going through this system. You know, this is the system that kind of defined us. And now we're kind of in this system. We're the people we're basically the system. And so that just comes with just an awesome amount of responsibility. So it gives me pause and gives me reflection. But I think at the end of the day, I define myself with that immigrant story. It's basically, you talked about other, we're not the only story, right? We're not the only, but it is the quintessential human story in some ways, right? It's a story about survival. It's about family. It's about where you define your home. It's about a sense of belonging, and the pursuit of becoming better people and having better lives. And so I think that's something that everybody can relate to. And it's something that I define myself by, and I hang on to that.
Thank you so much, Danny, for sharing. How about Thuy? How about yourself? Your mic there, Thuy. Your mic there. Yeah.
I'm sorry. Let me start this again. I face various barriers getting to higher education. I struggle to find my passion, would led me to change my major so many times. Even though I obtained my degree, I was still lost. However, after graduating from Mission College, I got a job at Mission College. I want to thank you to my professor, that the people who given me the knowledge, the education, and make me what I become here today. I realized that I truly like empowering others, especially immigrants like me. I like to share my story and inspire those around me to do the same. I believe as we live, we celebrate our accomplishment, our struggle deserve the same recognition. I am here to change the future of education, where all the students will prosper in all aspects of their life. Throughout my years of experience, I have become multicultural competent when I'm working with students, faculty, staff, and administrator who derive from diverse ethnic and cultural background and social economic status and life experiences. It has enhanced my ability to identify adult gap within higher education and implementation and resource to bridge those gaps. Thank you.
Thank you, Thuy, for sharing your story. How about Ben? How about yourself?
Well, I'm not sure again my role again at Mission College, but as I said again, I was born in Vietnam and grew up in Vietnam. I just left Vietnam again 4 years ago, so I understand again Vietnam. I can share again stories, true story about Vietnam. If anyone again want me to learn about Vietnam, I willing again to help. And again, it just lets you know that again, some foreigners now, you see again, before I left Vietnam, some foreigner again asked me again, was there any war in Vietnam? So that means again, I think again, some foreigner they don't have again a full knowledge of Vietnam. They think that again there are still war again in Vietnam because they heard about Vietnam wars in 1975, and so as a new immigrant again here, I think again I can my role again is I can share again a story of Vietnam and help again those who want to learn more about Vietnam again. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, thank you, and Ben. Thank you so much, you guys, for sharing your story. I think the thing that I learned from you guys' experience is that school can be somewhat like a double-edged sword, right? It could be a place where you feel, isolated, you feel like an outsider, you feel excluded, you can be bullied, for being who you are. But if the school is run by the right people who have the right, mindset of wanting to help, and to make school an inclusive place for everybody. I think it'd be a beautiful thing that, you know, the education system can be a safe place, right? For immigrants, for refugees, right? And for so many people, right? To feel like they belong. And I think that's the evolution, right? Guys like, you know, Danny, Theresa, and Thuy, you guys are old enough to remember the days of like not being, you know, your parents dragging you around, right? To like translate for them, right? And feeling like you're that only kid in the classroom that like sticks out like a sore thumb, right? And you're being picked on. But I think that, you know, the higher education in particular, right? If we have the proper support and we understand the challenges and the barriers that like our students come from, and they still are coming from, right? That the Vietnamese American story continue to be told on a daily basis, is that we have now more and more people still coming over to America. So first generation, guys, doesn't end in 75, as you can see from this story. Like first generation could be 75, it could be 2018, you know, and we still have more family members coming. And I think it's more important than ever that as the education system, right, we do everything that we can so that way, you know, this new generation will never have to go through the pain and the trauma and the struggle that we had to go through, right? When there weren't those support services in particular. And I think that's the reason why, you know, I wanted to host this event, right? To tell our story, right? Where did we come from? How did we get here? But in doing so, it will help, I'm hoping it will help our, you know, our staff, our faculty, right? To do better at our job, to make sure that like everybody have an equal opportunity, right? And everybody have a chance to overcome those barriers, right? And feel like this is a place that they belong in particular. And even with my students who are the younger generation, who are removed from the war, right? And they don't understand, you know, why is it that my parents put so much pressure on me to succeed and to do all of this? I'm hoping that if you understand the history, that you will understand the expectations, right? The standards, right? And oftentimes the generational trauma that you know, that first generation carry with them. So I always find that every single classroom, I always find like one or two students, you know, who are Vietnamese Americans, and they're like, my parents wanted me to be an engineer. They want me to be a pharmacist. And I'm always like, you know, there are more ways to make money than one, right? Like there are more ways to make money than one. So I hope that this will be a story that will resonate with many of you guys out there, you know, faculty, staff, and students, and why the Vietnamese American experience is so somewhat important is because I want the rest of the campus to know that, you know, Vietnamese Americans got an opportunity to come here and look at the progress that we have made. And I hope that it will inspire you on campus and off campus to think about those who are still trying to come here, right? Whether it's the Latinx community that are stuck right now at the detention border, whether it's Afghan refugees, Iraqi refugees, right? Who are somewhat, you know, again, you know, allies of the Americans, but left for stranded, right? I hope that it will help us open our doors and welcome these people in and give them the same opportunity that we once received. But in order for us to do that, guys, I think even within the Vietnamese American community, we need to do some self-reflection of our own in particular, right? That there are still some challenges that we have to overcome and make sure that our community as well, you know, extend the welcomeness and the support to other communities who are also struggling as well as immigrants, right? And as marginalized communities in particular. So guys, I hope that you enjoy what we have presented today. It's not everything. Like there are so many other things that I still want our panels to somewhat share in particular, but you know, I did say 1 o'clock, so we are at 1 o'clock, but I want to thank you guys so much for showing up and for supporting us. And I hope the recording worked, and I will send it out to everybody, all right? And if you got time, stick around, you know, well, I'll answer whatever question you may have. We can converse some more. We'll do a little bit of Tevin Campbell, you know, can we talk? And you know, just stick around, we'll talk some more. So I will stop the recording here today. And I want to thank you, Mission College, staff, faculty, students for participating. And first and foremost, thank you, Danny, Theresa, Thuy, and Ben for sharing your story. I know it was hard on you guys, and thank you so much for helping me out, guys. Thank you so much. Have a great day.